Welcome to the Cannon Beach Library's 4th annual Writers Read celebration. We're really excited to have you here, and we have some great writers and their works to share with you tonight. So welcome to the celebration. As I said, this is our 4th annual celebration, and we're really excited to be able to participate tonight and to show you what wonderful talent we have all across the region. I am Nancy McCarthy. I'm a volunteer with the Northwest Authors Series Committee, which puts on the celebration every year. And I'm really happy to be able to be working with these wonderful writers. Tonight, we will hear 11 writers who wrote poems, stories, and essays on the theme of recovery, and that's recovery with a question mark. So maybe they recovered, maybe they didn't, maybe it's still in question. They were asked to limit their work to 600 words per entry, and they were limited to 3 entries. From 45 entries, a 5-member panel selected 16 to be read tonight. The judges based their selection on language use, how closely they followed the theme, and the emotions that each piece evoked. The judges read the pieces without knowing who wrote them. The writers live in locations ranging from Cannon Beach, Oregon to Battleground, Washington, and they also include Camas and Nassau, Washington, as well as areas along the North Oregon coast. Some of the writers have participated in the Writers Read celebration before, others are new, and their experiences range from being professional writers, book publishers, to just beginning writers. After they read their work, I will ask them questions so we can get to know them better. Any audience member can also post a question on the library's Facebook page. Our fantastic library manager, Jen Dixon, who is the wizard behind this online presentation, will forward those questions to me, and I will ask them after everyone has finished reading. We hope to get it through as many as we can during this hour or hour 15-minute presentation. But don't deal with details. Let's get on with the presentation. So let's begin with our first writer, Adria Badanani. I knew I was going to clobber that name. Adria is a poet, a priestess, and a mother who lives in Manzanita. Her background in music and performance art influences her poetry, which can be found in Windfall, a journal of poetry of place, and in forthcoming collections, Mother's Word, which will be published this year, and At the Edge of Light, to be published in 2023. She creates custom elemental ritual kits as arts and channel, and she offers creative and spiritual wellness support. In her first presentation for the Writers Read celebration, Adria will read her poem, Bird. So welcome, Adria. Please begin.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, this poem is called Bird. Protesters gather along the riverbanks. The bird in the box is still breathing, but tell me something true. Walking home from the ocean, I cross paths with a wounded bird on the street. He, she, it, they, I don't know. Bird. I pick up bird with a dog waste bag covering my hand. I bring you gentle care. I hope you are not in too much pain. Others fly around singing sunset songs. I carry bird on my right hand covered in biodegradable plastic to protect us both from each other's. I want bird to feel my warmth and loving skin. Bird trembles in my palm. Pain, fear, relief. Babies flutter with smiles when they sleep. But tell me something true. I stop near the marsh and wonder if bird is meant to come here to hide with the skunk cabbage and calla lilies near the stream, trickling to the sea. Perhaps bird needs a soft spot to die, away from the rolling tires. Pause, breathe, listen. We continue onward. Bird quivers in my palm again. All the way home, I carry Bird to seek solace inside a box from Priority Mail, empty of coffee, brown paper, white paper, shreds. Amethyst dish of water, a handful of birdseed prayers. I whisper, "You are beautiful," as I watch her rib cage expand, contract. But tell me something true. The full moon is stuck behind clouds, heavy with discontent. Under the covered front porch, Bird weathers the night. I weep for not knowing what type Bird is, thrush, crossbill, towhee. Maybe Bird has a nest not far from this cardboard chamber, strewn with feathers and feces. I read both males and females feed their fledglings. The baby sleeps through the night now. Rain is widespread today as protesters march along the river that flows out to sea just north of here. Bird breathes another day open, looking present. In the afternoon, I check on her and the box is empty. Tell me something true.
I hope that's a hopeful ending.
Me too.
Thank you for your work. Why did you write this poem? Was it something that actually happened?
It did, and it was about 2 months after I had given birth, and so I was feeling particularly just particularly mesmerized and attentive to everything in my immediate surroundings. This was also right in the lockdown time of the pandemic. And so this stretch of road it became my entire universe. And I really felt a responsibility to steward not just my daughter's life, but all of the life that I came across.
Well, then you'd be quite sensitive to anything like that that would be happening in your life, right?
Very much so, and still so.
You say that music and performance art influence your poetry. Can you tell us how?
I think that when I hear a poem start to come through, I really respond to it, or I treat it like a piece of music. I really hear it and I feel a certain beat. And when I compose, it's in a very rhythmic way. And so I think that influence really is a profound filter to how I hear the poem and how I think of it, imagine it being spoken. I really do feel them as not static on paper. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to breathe life and voice into it.
That I would imagine you kind of carry that rhythm then with you throughout your life in terms of everything you do then.
I've heard it said that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And sometimes I really rebel against that. And sometimes I reality check. And I think there is there is a grain of truth to that. Sometimes it's comforting and sometimes it's discomforting.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your work, and we really enjoyed the judges really enjoyed selecting it. Let's go on to our next writer, John Chiminello. John Chiminello of Naselle, Washington, is the author of 2 chapbooks, Shrine Above the High Tide and Magnolias, Mockingbirds, and Sweet Potato Pies. His work also appeared in the recently published anthology, Songs from the Flowering Mountains, and his work appears in local and regional publications. John says he writes for many reasons. He says, "I love words and stories and emotions distilled in beautiful and moving phrases. I write from a place of profound humility, since I am as lost as anyone else on this strange, crazy, kaleidoscopic journey we call life. My work as an artist, writer, musician is as much an offering to the holy as it is an incomplete record of my time here. Some may say I am feeding the unseen with the food of my work. I hope the unseen finds my work palatable. Lily Tomlin once said, reality is a collective hunch. We are all trying to figure out this ride as we make our way through this world with as much dignity, elegance, and humor as we can muster. My hope in my writing is that it is a small contribution to the greater beauty around us. John has actually been a writer for us before. He has contributed before. So let us hear John's work tonight. John?
Thank you, Nancy. I have two poems tonight. The first is called The Dowser. The Dowser. Long past is the time for swimming holes and cannonball splashes into still water lifted from the source. One moment sky and another sparkle joy and laughter. Now I hire a dowser to find a twitch of water to bring back the sparkle and the joy. The existing well has slowed to less than a gallon a minute. Too sluggish for the pool and irrigation. We cannot wash clothes and dishes at the same time. He calls himself a water witch and walks the property like a mage following tendrils of magic. I want to know what he sees, what he feels underground coursing, where buried coins and mole tunnels and wormways thread beside a network of mycelium. He stops, and I see the forked willow wand jerk in his calloused hands as if to say X marks the spot. Am I confident enough to tap a new flow, sink, pipe, pump, casing, to suck up what's left of the river beneath the river, the hidden granitic cavity down under? Or am I looking to recover an older source of joy? I pay the dowser his due, say a short prayer of thanks, and think about that long ago swimming hole.
Thank you. Go ahead and write and do your second one.
Okay, the second poem is called Back to the Beginning. In the Northwest woods, on the flank of Mount Adams near Buck Creek, once home to ancient forests and clear falling rivers, we lose ourselves. Of course, it's not our intention. From base camp in a clear cut where the orange Toyota and two green tents form a neighborhood, we follow a path between sentinel trees and blackberries long past ripe, crossing the creek twice, maybe three times, before the path disappears under snow. And we imagine the trace with evidence of deer pellets, broken tips of young fir trees, and animal tracks we guess might be bear. Deeper into the cedars, we speculate direction in the rise of a ridgeline near the fall of a creek. Gray skies splay light with no telling where the sun rises or sets. We see moss in every direction. Old man's beard hangs from big dug firs. We hear the croak of ravens, and after several hours of wandering through patches of vanilla leaf and scree, devil's club, and boulders the size of sleeping mammoths, despite our humor and our hubris, we accept we're lost. Harrison regrets not bringing a compass or map. I regret no food or flashlight or shelter. Patricia regrets following into the woods, not one, but two fools without a clue of how to get back to the beginning. And I can say in our defense, We were kids playing in the forest primeval, filled with the presence of watchers and fantasies of Tolkien, Hiawatha, and Daniel Boone, Lewis, Clark, and Sacagawea, with no direction home. As evening mists gather, we cross another creek to climb another ridge for more light and a better view of the valley below. If we could move mountains in our innocence, perhaps we can reassess our predicament, as if to begin again, not to recover the world as it never was, but to have a chance to remake ourselves, despite 6 hours lost in self-inflicted anxiety and alarm. We age with every step, too old, too hungry, too damaged for the climb. And yet, we hope to begin again, to shape a new ending. We follow our tattered instincts, listen to the chatter of roosting gray jays, camp robbers ready for the coming of another night. And we believe in the mystery of mushrooms, connecting all trees of the forest in a web of sentient beings aware of our plight, and we hope a little amused by our stupidity. We follow the last pitch of light to the top of the ridgeline, where, to our surprise below, we see patches of young firs and alder in the open clear cut, where an orange Toyota and 2 green tents form a neighborhood.
Thank you. I got a real kick out of hearing that, reading that.
Thank you.
Was your poem based on a true adventure?
Oh, yes, yes. Regrettably.
And you managed to recover quite nicely, I take it.
Well, I never forgot it. I became wiser for it.
John, how do your personal experiences influence your writing?
In every way, every way. Something happens, it becomes part of my writing. It becomes part of a poem or part of a story. Everything around me influences me.
Yeah, they say you should write based on what you know. So I guess that's what you're trying to do then.
Well, it is, but I always believe that the imagination plays with that, so that even though you have an experience, the imagination comes in and enhances some details or balances things. So it's a little bit of both.
Tell me about the dowser. What was that all about? Was that based on a true experience?
It's about somebody that came out and was looking for water. The well was down to 1.25 gallons per minute, which is not the best. We had neighbors that had 11 gallons per minute.
Okay.
And so it was alarming because they won't sell property if it's under a certain amount. You have to put in a new well. So and he was interesting. I think I did not necessarily follow. I didn't think that well, but I thought about it because it was in a different location than the existing well.
Wow. Well, great. I really enjoyed reading your poetry. So thank you, and continue to submit to the Writers Read, because we enjoy hearing from you.
Thank you.
Our next writer is Bill Graffius. Am I pronouncing your last name right, Bill? Close enough. Bill Graffius of Gearhart says that at heart, he is a storyteller. After living in Arizona for 24 years, he and his family moved to the Seaside area in 1998, where he was the general manager of the Seaside Signal. And as an aside, I know that paper well since I once edited it. The 2 poems selected by the judges came out of what Bill affectionately calls jigsaw poetry. His friends, he asks friends to give him 10 random words, and he constructs a poem. He says about these jigsaw poems, sometimes the theme comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it's just a picture I'm trying to paint. Sometimes it reflects where I perceive the word giver to be at that moment in their life. And sometimes it is how I myself am feeling, and sometimes it's a bit of some or all. Words from a friend for the Cyber Gardener, a poem that he will read tonight, included eloquent, bramble, organic, witch hazel, cyborg, artisan, Pegasus, herbaceous, tulip, and plebeian. He says, I see it as a poem showing that healing is a spiritual and intellectual journey as well as a physical process. His next poem, Deciding Factor, came from his niece. The words were persevere, condensation, lichen, anime, coffee, bufflehead, lighting, multiplication, fluffy, towered. He says, this is a poem about how finding the right environment can be healing. Please help me welcome Bill Graffius. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Sometimes those words can be a real challenge, and I've had people try to trip me up, so it can be fun. The Cyborg Gardener. I love the herbaceous in nature, she muses to herself, plunging her trowel into the dark loam with the cold prosthesis that clumsily moves where her right arm once danced with precision. I love eloquent stems that stand proudly erect like the crocus, heralding the end of winter, and the tulip announcing spring's arrival. You are the colorful counterpoints to my scars, delicate reminders of the strong but fragile limb I lost. She knows in her heart that her garden has become a refuge, a sanctuary, the one place where she can speak her mind without fear, with no one to hear and comment in disagreement. My life is plebeian, not aristocratic, she argues, but I surround myself with the trappings of the patrician, with gardens and pathways, ringing a beautiful fountain, fed by an artesian spring, gurgling happily through the genitals of a curly-haired boy, casually relieving himself into a lily-lined bowl. Here, she declares, is where Pegasus rent the earth with his hooves, and the font of Hippocrene burst forth to water my garden and my soul. Pausing to wipe her brow, she turns her gaze to a pair of witch hazel shrubs and the bramble, as she lovingly calls her dog rose. These beauties break the pattern, she murmurs, for giving them their woody stalks and the rose's rough thorns. It takes a cyborg like me to prune my wild growing prickly beauty, she chuckles. The thorns can find no purchase on my marriage of plastic and metal with the organic. It defeats the assaults of your daggers, she says to the pink-flowered plant, and your friend there with the egg-shaped leaves and slender yellow flowers hanging like straps makes a wonderful salve for when you do get me. Her day's tasks accomplished, she stands and sighs deeply, thinking, my flowers don't care about my deformities, my scars, my twisted patchwork of repairs to God's handiwork. My garden is my lifeline to the natural, lest the plastic and space age alloys taint my blood and fuse with my flesh, and I become something more artificial than human. A pause, and she wryly comments out loud, but truly to herself, I wonder if my solitude shows it may already be too late.
Great. All right. How about your second one?
Okay, Deciding Factor. This is from my niece who has served as an instructor at state parks, doing things for children, telling them about the natural environment. And she was living in the city at the time. Deciding Factor. Somehow life had become too complex. The simplicity of morning coffee and watching anime had slowly evolved into a multiplication of problems, of bills, relationships, and responsibilities. Towering higher and higher, frightening, threatening, so she ran, seeking the solace of ocean waves, lichen-covered rocks, and the refreshing condensation of morning mists floating down from the skies. It's here she finds peace. The dim lighting of dawn is healing to her, a therapy of light and the unspoken promise of a new day. The smells of brine and the rippling beauty of the receding tide preserves her inner calm. The strength within that city living abhors gradually returns. A bufflehead and its fluffy chick wander the mudflats, diligently searching for the tiny shrimp, worms, and larvae exposed by the receding waters. I belong here with you, she says to the small ducks, not in steel, concrete, and glass canyons. Here, where the water is a mirror, where chaos has order, where life is in the present moment, worrying neither about the past or the future. The duck pays her no heed and continues their foraging. Simplicity, she thinks, knowing this calming scene is a complex tableau of life and death beyond imagination, yet calm. And in that healing calm, she makes her decision.
And I want to make a note that the judges, when they saw these poems, did not know that these were poems made of jumbled or jigsaw poetry. We didn't know that they were just words that he challenged himself to string together. So you did a nice job. How did you ever come up with this idea? I've never heard of it before. So how did you ever come up with this idea to do this, and how challenging is it?
It's really challenging, to be honest with you. It's I have another niece whose husband came up with some really bizarre stuff, but I managed to put together a poem that was really solid, not suitable for prime time, but it worked out really well. I surf a lot of poetry sites. I love poetry. I like to read it. I like to write it. I'm just always looking for a fresh voice. And I saw it at one site years ago where somebody said, brought up the concept of the jigsaw poem, give them 10 words. And I've just been doing it ever since. And I use it whenever I get writer's block. I'll go and I'll find somebody and I'll say, hey, I need some help, kickstart me, give me 10 words. And they go, well, what word? Just write 10 words down, just off the top of your head. And then from that, I try to see what vision comes out of it. Sometimes it's weird.
Do you ever get stumped?
I get delayed. I don't want to say stumped. Sometimes it just comes right out, and other times I have to revisit it too many times to speak of to finally get what I'm looking for. But I usually end up being able to construct something.
When you did these two poems, did you have recovery in mind, or did it just happen that way?
It just happened that way. I just saw the theme recovery and I said, these two fit.
Okay, well, we're glad they did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next writer is Karen Keltz. Karen Keltz of Tillamook is a former journalist and educator. She has won awards for poetry, nonfiction, fiction, and screenwriting. Her newest juvenile novel is Laurel Hedges and the Evil Lurker, and it is available on Amazon. Regarding her two poems, she says, there are so many ways to recover within our reach. It takes courage and sometimes prayer for one to recover. Recovery also requires resilience, but we must realize that when we wish to recover, what we wish to recover from is also resilient and can be stronger than our intentions. I believe all of us are dealing with one kind of recovery or another, because it's an essential component of moving forward with our lives. Karen will read two poems tonight, Another Kind of Resilience and Realm of Possibility. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Nancy. Another kind of resilience. Frost still lies in the shadow of the poplar across the lane, the swath of existence. Even if we cut the tree down, in the next minute, the frost remains as proof. What was done cannot be undone, despite attempts at forgiveness and reconciliation. Rage and resentment's resilient gall won't be tamped. Doesn't end with a person's death. No matter what you've been told, it lingers with no place to go, the inexpungible shadow of what once was in your frozen heart. Realm of possibility. Anything can be a prayer if you have the eyes and heart to see. The soil lying hot, dry, and baked into parched chunks, fine dust blowing, prays for water. A heap of cast-offs chucked into a pile at the bottom of an empty lot, encrusted with oil and rust, tangled in weeds like lovers' arms, a doll with one leg, no head, a child's shoe missing its button, a cooking pot scorched hole in the bottom, a wooden chair missing a leg. All pray for a true finish. An orphan prays for loving parents. A couple prays for a child. Starvation prays for food, and frozen limbs pray for fire. A song born from heartache is a prayer. Your touch on the back of my neck, one prayer I could answer.
Thank you very much. I just wondered if journalism plays any part in your ability to write poetry.
I think I have always been interested in people, and the journalism that I was a part of were stories about people. I just thought everybody's life is fascinating, and there's always something to learn from a person's life and what they do.
The things that you described in your, I think it was the realm of possibility, there's very specific details. Did you see those yourself? Is that something that you experienced seeing, or is it something that you imagined?
You know, over my lifetime, I probably have seen a lot of those things. But those things just came to me. I am very lucky to be part of a writer's meetup with, which is run by a poet and publisher, Lana Ayers. And it's a wonderful place to write and feel safe in your writing. And those things just came to me one time when we were given a prompt, and that just came to me. I never know where things are going to come from or why they come, but they do.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes things come from clear back in your brain, something you've experienced many, many years ago, or maybe watched or saw or something. So you never know, like you say. You also write juvenile fiction. Do any themes from your adult writing or from your non-juvenile writing make their way into your books for juveniles?
In my books, the main characters so far have been young women, and I make sure that those young women are very smart and very talented.
That's good. Great. All right. Well, very smart and very talented kind of describes our next writer, Phyllis Mannon. Phyllis Mannon lives with her husband and daughter in Manzanita. She is a recipient of a literary arts fellowship in poetry. She is co-leader of the Poetry Fest, a program of the Hoffman Center for the Arts, and she is a member of the editorial team of the North Coast Squid Literary Magazine. She has a poetry chapbook, Bitterbrush, published by Finishing Line Press, and she has a memoir, Torn Fish, a mother, her autistic son, and their shared humanity. Her work has been published in Cloudbank, North Coast Squid, The Oregonian, Rain Magazine, Stringtown, and elsewhere. Please help me welcome Phyllis Mannon, who will read a story titled Holes and a poem titled Poem with a Line from Lao Tzu. Hello, Phyllis.
Hello, Nancy. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Holes.
What are you going? You're going to read Holes first, okay?
Yes. Holes. I wait for the elevator to take me away from my father, lying in a room behind me. I pull the beige sweater my grandmother knitted tighter around my chest. Loosely woven, with large gaps in the yarn, it gives little comfort. My grandmother meant her gift to be useful, but what good is a sweater made of holes? The hospital's cooling system blasts frigid air. I shiver, sunlight through the corridor's windows can't warm me. They'll make him more comfortable, then send him home, Mom had said when she called that morning. Dad had been having trouble breathing through the night. If it hadn't been Labor Day weekend, oxygen could have been delivered. Dad would have died at home as he wished. Instead, he was gone an hour after admission, before I could reach the hospital. After a few minutes in the room, I'd left my mother, sister, and aunt to precede them to the house where relatives and friends would flock. The previous evening, all four of us children had gathered at my parents' house in Scappoose. Dad lay propped in bed, his face white as the sheets. My two brothers leaned in next to him on the bed, their faces ruddy from camping and fishing that summer, a startling contrast. I remembered Mom saying when Dad was a child, he didn't know anyone slept between sheets. He had only rough blankets. It had been less than 4 months since the diagnosis and the dire prediction that he wouldn't last until the end of the year. I'd seen the look on his face when he left the doctor's office, the narrowing of his life behind him. It's for the best, we said. He won't have to suffer too long. Dad had worked in ship repair, snipping and riveting sheets of metal to fill gaping holes, lining the boiler with asbestos insulation. He developed the most common type of mesothelioma, which starts in the pleura, the lining around the lungs. Who knew a hard gray mineral used to protect the ship's walls from burning could separate into long, thin threads, rise in a white cloud, and spear the serous lining of my father's lungs? That a tumor could grow inside his pleural lining undetected for 30 years or more, then reach behind the lungs to wrap itself around his heart. Just enough time, Dad consoled us. I can check on my will and my life insurance, make sure everything's in place. But of course, there would never be enough time for those who loved him. As I stood waiting for the elevator, it was the beginning of September, the time of year that I'd always liked best. When I was young, the school year had stretched ahead of me like a bolt of new fabric, ready to be mastered. When I started teaching, I loved to block out how much time my classes would spend on each unit and draw up lesson plans for each week. Now, September would always signal an end, not a beginning. What good is a sweater made of holes? I think again, what good is a pleura that can't protect the lungs? In H is for Hawk, Helen McDonald says, There is a time in life when you expect the world to be always full of new things. And then comes a day when you realize that is not how it will be at all. You see that life will become a thing made of holes. The fortunate part, McDonald says, is that we learn to grow around them.
All right. And your next one is a poem?
Yes. Poem with a line from Lao Tzu.
Okay.
And Lao Tzu was the founder of Taoism and the presumed author of the Tao Te Ching. Sometimes you want more astonishment, but then you remember the sun glinting off windows when you walk the beach late in the day, how the houses appear on fire, the half moon gleaming in the clear sky at noon. You remember the young girl on the beach running to water's edge again and again, dumping sandy water from a yellow bucket to make a moat that keeps disappearing. Empty and be full, says the Tao Te Ching, but you need to buy paint. Fir needles clog your gutters, and your son rants on about the dangers of critical race theory. One wave rides inside another, the burning earth, pandemic, cancer. Then comes this light splashed winter day. Its newness, its cool upwelling, its breakers, blooming like white chrysanthemums.
You'll find recovery everywhere.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, you write stories and poetry. Which is the most, and which is the most difficult for you to write?
Well, of course, it depends on the piece, but in general, I would say that I struggle perhaps more with poetry than I do with essay. I write more poetry now than I do essay or memoir. But I, it's a challenge, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, as somebody who has read pieces that have been submitted to the writers read and has judged them. How do you go about selecting pieces to be included in the North Coast Squid?
Well, actually, we have outside judges because, we know everybody in our own immediate area, and it really would not be a good idea for us to be judging each other's work. So we do have outside judges, and that's a good thing. It's kind of like what you do too. You don't. It's blind judging where no names on the pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever get information from the judges about why they liked a certain piece or what it was about that particular piece that got selected?
No.
Wow. Wow. Okay, no secrets then. We can't delve into the secrets of selection.
No.
We'll just have to take our chances.
Right.
All right. Our next writer is Steve Mayer, and Steve is from Cannon Beach. Yay. Steve is retired from business and education about 6 years ago and moved full-time to the North Coast with his wife, Linda. During that time, he has written seriously, including 2 books of memoirs and prose, and is published in various literary journals. Steve is reading for the first time at Writers Read Celebration. He will share his essay on recovery with us tonight. Welcome, Steve.
So my essay is on recovery. The pandemic hits us hard. While vaccines generate optimism, immunization and containment efforts are hampered by misinformation, shortages, and politics. A wide range of confounding emotions taunt and haunt me during tedious days and sleepless nights. Recovery is but a dream, and I continue to grieve the pandemic. Kaleidoscopic ambivalence is my reality. Most often, I'm anxious. Our current health threats and coping strategies touch nearly every aspect of our lives. With traditional values and norms compromised, most yearn for their imminent return. Public health, employment, education, travel, social life. Conventional wisdom reminds we don't know what we got until it's gone. I worry that recovery focuses solely on restoring what is lost. I am hopeful. We are in a cultural whirlwind. It is wise to consider the flip side of convention. We don't know what we don't have until it's found. The pandemic changes us a deliberate lifestyle, work from home, online education, and a focus on presence and past. I hope recovery preserves better life values and practices found. I am also perplexed. Our philosophical challenge is arguably better balance of things lost and found. Can we recognize them? Can we integrate the best of both? Can we sustain them well? Can we abandon dysfunctional practices? Or are we likely to embrace tradition unhampered by progress? I wonder if we can recover wisely and construct a new, better normal. And lastly, I ponder. We are compelled to ask what makes sense and what doesn't. Answers that define the success of recovery. It is wise to live deliberately and reflect deeply as we navigate the vast complications of present pandemic life. It will test our civilization. I wonder if we're up to that test. I wonder what we learn about our place in the economy. Our traditional employment contract has been altered. Working at home is more acceptable. Employers suspend fears of abuse and rethink social philosophy. Technology eases fears. Human performance increases or decreases. Research underway suggests the latter. Will recovery recognize this shift in economic reality? I wonder if recovery promotes healing from loss. Our pandemic takes a huge human toll. Many suffer and die. Surveys reveal that nearly everyone reports incidents of loss and grief. Dear friends of ours die of COVID. Heartbreaking. My grief ignites at the altar of unforeseen risk. When persons knowingly resist containment adherence and incur greater risk for others than they assume themselves. Will recovery achieve better public health? And finally, I wonder what we learn, what we teach ourselves, and what we miss. How do we cope with ill health, loneliness, isolation, stress, boredom, heartache? How do we discover and change What do we discover and change about ourselves and our relationship with loved ones? How do we think about and pursue a truly meaningful life? Can we achieve sufficient change to enhance our quality of life? Bottom line, full recovery requires a new, better normal. As we eagerly run out of an ongoing pandemic into cultural chaos, it is wise to rethink our options carefully and ask who we are and who we want to be. Thank you.
You've obviously thought long and hard about recovery. What have you discovered about yourself during this time?
Well, one of the things I discovered is that it's a whirlwind inside myself as well, as far as emotionally, kaleidoscopic ambivalence. I mean, I think that pretty well captures, although I shared only 4 emotions, it's a whirlwind of emotional confetti. It just sort of just flows on me all the time when I look at what's going on around. Some of it makes me angry, some of it gives me hope, some of it gives me fear, and some part of me has faith restored in humanity. So
What would you consider to be for you a better normal?
a better normal would be someone who, first of all, if we have a pandemic like we've had, is smart about doing what promotes their health and the health of people around them, including vaccination and containment. Someone who focuses less on themselves and what society is doing to them to harm them, and more on what they may be doing unknowingly to harm society. And I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what's flowing through my brain.
All right. Well, I think a lot of people are kind of taking another look at their lives and maybe the world around them and trying to define what a better normal might be for them as well. So thank you for opening us up to that.
I would hope we will achieve a consensus among a broad range of people what that better normal might look like.
Well, now you might be asking for a lot in this world, but hopefully we could get to that point.
Yes.
All right, let's talk to our next writer, Kristen Nekevar. Kristen Nekevar, also known as Bliss, is both a visual artist and a poet in Astoria. She calls her art a lifesaver, spiritual guide, and newfound freedom. She recently had a solo exhibit at the Astoria Visual Arts Gallery, where she was an artist in residence. Entitled The Mess and the Minutia, the exhibit is described on the AVA's website as an introspective body of work of highly detailed personal reflections on mental health and addiction. Always a private person, Kristen says that when she began painting, she found her voice and the tools to create meaningful conversations. She says she always tries to find the true story in her work. The same could be said about her poetry. Tonight, Kristen will deliver a rap poem titled Pillbug. This is her first time participating in the Writers' Read celebration. Welcome, Kristen.
I go by Bliss. This is my poem, Pillbug.
Tick tock goes the cuckoo clock. Tick tock, tick tock. Roly-poly pillbugs dancing in the dirt club, bumping in gray armored gloves, so long as under rocks, compressed and tight, beside fractured light, clawing up one another, 7 legs right, till no one left. Flip script, belly up, double wide, and I'm inside. Louder with fresh lies, wet painted on mic cries, Bolder with that bass, I beat up on this face, and trouble with the treble, high pitch times 3. Wee, slid down that slippery slope, and wee, I buckled at the knees, torn beneath my apron, serving the laps of luxury. Rusty nail, you say? Perhaps a jammy Cabernet? I'll have it your way, right away, right away. And so I sway, sway. Another day, astray, wide awake, straddling the stake, my love life in the wake, belly ache, so still I shake, bourbon break, wine mistake to deviate, alleviate, self-hate, two-headed snake, loosely taking the bait at both ends. It is me, these slippery scales for feet, on the prowl, like a dog in heat. Only I'll take it neat. Please, grab a seat. Coming clean is a messy prophecy. So still, I bleed like a knee-grown knee. From 1919, it's Campari, baby, please, not me. I was equal opportunity, mayor of cocktail community, lover of all things bubbly. So still, I was sweet. You kept me wet behind the ears for years, baby years. Speaking of babies, let's address the elephants in the room. Alcoholic, baby mama, pansexual drama, WTF. Well, you can put it to rest. Assured my seasons of duress were like bookends to my best. Those innocent windows in time were divine, sublime, wholeheartedly mine. But then the dimes, the damn dimes, always undermine. Never a second try, now the wells are always dry. And then we turn back to being pillbugs, looking for another rug under which to sweep our love, and over with new shiny gloves under which we crawl away. And so we sway. Another day, astray, wide awake, straddling the stake, my love life in the wake, belly ache, so still I shake, bourbon break, wine mistake to deviate, alleviate, self-hate. So let's set the record straight. There's little need for a debate. I wasn't great. Nah, I was a gravel-filled pillowcase, beating hearts of those I can't replace. Favorite disgrace? Indeed, I was greed, and I was pieces. Some fragments I never knew. I was broken, and I was weakness, the ever-obvious blue, times 2. So I drowned in my own defeat, dark, dismal, and discreet. But it's not only me whom the white dove leaves. It's the girl across the street who can't seem to find her feet, who's pulling her own hair as if it's got loose teeth. Breathe. I see you. From my window upstairs, we locked eyes as if of truth or dare. What's under there besides despair? I care, I swear, I've been there. Land of compare, where our disillusion lies in our solution, and what started as tradition becomes a concave solo submission. Underground tunnels don't let in much light, and pillbugs reunite, armored tight. Bite, 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 clawing up one another, 7 legs right, till no one left.
The next poet is Jennifer Nightingale. Jennifer is well known to writers read. When Jennifer was a child, her mother read poetry to her and to her sister. They were encouraged to commit their favorite poems to memory. It's a small step from listening and reciting poetry to trying to find your own hand at writing poems, Jennifer notes. Her first attempts made her mother cry, and she kept her daughter's poems in her box of important papers. When Jennifer lived in Seattle, the Welsh communities of Seattle and Vancouver, BC, asked her to read her poems that honored their history at several events. Since moving to Astoria, Jennifer has found a community of poets who nurture her efforts. She often joins the gathering of poets at Rick's open mic at Astoria's Pier 11. Jennifer lives in a little house in Astoria on the hill overlooking Young's Bay with her husband Holt and their spotted dog Mickey. She has participated several times at our Writers Read celebration. Tonight, she is reading her poem, Everything Changed. Welcome, Jennifer. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Nancy. It's always an honor to be part of this celebration. And I have to confess that I miss the cookies, but
Yeah.
it is wonderful to gather with everyone here.
Maybe next year.
Exactly. Everything changed. Many years ago, my mother painted the ceiling. She wasn't tall, but she was determined. Climbing a ladder and moving it about up and down, she went, wearing one of my father's old shirts. Paint sprinkled her glasses, speckled her face and kerchief. I filled her tray full of creamy paint and lifted it up to her. It was the last time she would ever paint. We tidied up and celebrated, packed the car with pillows and blankets. We were going to see a light and fluffy film at a drive-in theater. What movie are we going to see? I asked. With 6, you get egg rolls. It's a comedy with Doris Day, she said. We headed down the road and across the lake on a floating bridge. It was a soft summer evening, feathery blue and gauzy pink. Perfect weather for a drive-in movie. An unexpected squall blew in. My mother set the windshield wiper on its highest setting. How can we see the movie with all this rain? I asked. Oh, it's only a summer squall, she said. It will blow through. And then out of that dark, wet night, there was an explosion. The car flew, or so it seemed as if it did. Is everybody okay? I asked. I can't breathe, my mother said. She sounded desperate. I'll get help, I said. The door was jammed. I rolled the window down and poured my child body through the open space. I remember rain, red lights, and sirens, but I don't remember getting wet. My sister and I and the family dog were corralled into a police car. The windows didn't open and we were locked inside. Our mother was lifted into an ambulance and driven away. Do they know she couldn't breathe? Will they be able to help her? I pounded on the windows. I thought we had been forgotten. My sister and I went to the hospital nearly every day after school. It seemed like months, and no one had answers. Will you get better? I asked. Of course I'll get better. She smiled as if she meant it. I brushed her hair. My arms don't work like they used to, she said, more to herself than to me. Can't we ask the doctors when you will be able to paint again? They don't know if it will ever be possible, but I'm just happy that I got it done. Months and years went by and she never painted again. She adapted and experimented and learned to dress herself. Her once strong hands clawed up and she couldn't feel pain when she burned them. Perhaps we need to find you a new doctor that can help you fully recover. I can't think about what I can't do. I can only think about what I can do. What she did was a marvel. She embraced all kinds of people, accepting, curious, engaged. She greeted each day with anticipation. Yes, she never painted again, nor did she ever watch with 6 you get egg rolls. She danced around the living room and sipped her scotch and soda, loved her dog and drove a car, albeit one that was modified. And sometimes a black cloud would move in and descend on her. And she and the black cloud would retreat to a back room, play the game of what's the worst that could happen. I'm not going there, I heard her say. And though she could never paint again, nor watch any Doris Day movie, she also never gave up.
Definitely a recovery story. Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how the community of poets that you have found help you nurture your efforts.
Well, first of all, you know, one of the things I really learned from the community of poets, as much as anything else, was to really listen to others' poetry and see how it impacted me, how it affected me. And I learned from listening. And it took me a while because I went several times to the open mic and just thought to myself, well, I could never get out there with anything I wrote. And I think I probably had a pear mimosa or something one night and said, I think I'll give it a roll. But I learned a lot from that. And it was really, and over the years and over the miles, there's just been, I went to Portland to work for 9 months. And I was never here during the week. I commute home every weekend, and I was working for Kaiser Permanente. And I finally got back and I went to Rick's open mic, and I felt like it was a church. You know, I just felt like it restored my soul. And that was the last time we met together for a very long time, but I really understood what it meant to me.
Have you been able to meet since then at all?
We just met last Tuesday, and there's going to be another one. It's the first Tuesday of every month, and it's going to be in person again. And it really has some of the magic just doesn't come through Zoom. So it's wonderful to meet again. So if anyone wants to show up on the 5th of April, show up at 7:00, and the first 10 minutes people sign up, and then we have a wonderful evening.
Wonderful. So it's kind of like Writers Read every month.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've published at least one book. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about it, or if you're working on another one, if you can tell us about that one.
Oh, well, thank you, Nancy. The book I wrote is really a coming of age story that takes place in oyster country. And it even has one chapter where the characters drive over the brand new Astoria Megler Bridge. And it really deals with bullying and all the things that kids deal with now, but I didn't have to consider cell phones and social media and all the extra layers of things that are put on. And it is a tribute to the discovery of the natural world. I've had a lot of feedback from my various readers that have told me that although I wrote it as a coming of age novel, thinking that it was more, sort of a YA story, a lot of retired teachers had shared it among themselves and invited me over. And one of them told me that one of my characters, had I written it in present day, would be wearing a MAGA hat. And I thought to myself, it's so interesting to hear what other people see, or just reflecting your writing back to you. It's a thrill. And I am working on something, but I'm not quite ready to talk about that yet. But anyway,
right.
Maybe it's a sequel.
Yeah, we won't jinx it then. We won't jinx it.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Jennifer, Bill asked a question, and that was, can you tell us where Rick's open mic is every month?
Oh, absolutely. It's at Winecraft on Pier 11 on the Astoria waterfront.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's go on to our next writer, and that is Emily Ransdale. Emily has also participated in Writers Read before. Emily is from Camas, Washington, and she is a part-time resident of Manzanita. She's an active volunteer at the Hoffman Center for the Arts, where she teaches poetry writing classes over Zoom. She holds an MFA in poetry from Pacific University and has published work in numerous literary journals. Emily has participated in earlier Writers' Read celebrations. Tonight, she is reading 2 poems, To Consider the Blackberry and Our Pandemic Year. Please help me welcome Emily. Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
So 2 poems. Who knew this was going to go on so long? They're written like over a year apart. To Consider the Blackberry. And I'm dedicating this to my Manzanita neighbors, Lisa and Bruce, who have this poem in their yard. From branch and bramble come buckets of summer, from thickets of blossoms like stars, from straw hats and work shirts, thorn-slashed hands. Everyone knows the wild ones taste best, born of sunlight and sea air, sheltered as they ripen by a canopy of last season's growth. It has been a terrible year. Now that we know sickness can come on the breath of wind, we can no longer pretend the worst cannot happen, not to us. So let us pause to consider the blackberry. Let us praise its tender perfume, scent of memory, fragrance of every summer we've spent here together. Let us pause to consider what we took for granted then. And then a year later, our pandemic year. Our lives were culled to a kingdom of domesticity, the same few meals. You tried your hand at sourdough, I sewed. My eyebrows grew like a logger's, and in sunlight my hair shines silver, curling at my collarbone for the first time since I was a girl. Elsewhere, death lurked on the handles of shopping carts and in the currents of long amens. But at home, our calyx of isolation held us safe. Now the worst is supposedly over. Still, let's take it slow. Perhaps an ice cream after dinner, a walk through the neighborhood without masks, a trance of lamplight, a gauzy skirt. Perhaps if you wore that sharp fedora and whistled the way you used to, keys jangling in your pocket like the music of lucky stars. Thank you.
Nice one. I wanted to know what it's like to teach classes, poetry classes over Zoom. What's that been like for you?
Oh, man. Well, I was not going to do it at first, but we decided just to give it a try, and it actually has gone really well. I think, especially the very first one, because the first class was scheduled right before things got bad, and it was either Zoom or nothing. And I think that first one really gave people some relief from the isolation and fear, because remember at first we were really locked down. So I guess that gave me the confidence that it would work. And it really has. I feel there are people that I've never even met in person, but I know them now. So, yeah.
And does it give you, does it give people the feeling that they can be nurtured and encouraged, even if they're on Zoom? Is there a closeness there? I know in-person classes like that, you do feel it get to be really close to people. How does that work though on Zoom? Do you still feel that closeness?
Well, you'd have to ask them that. I hope so. I hope so. I do. I think we're supportive of one another, and yet not, I don't know the right word, we're honest, and I think our supportiveness allows each other to be honest. I think it's okay. We never thought it would be, but I think you do what you have to do.
It's amazing what Zoom has brought into our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like this right here.
All right. Well, let's go on to Scott T. Starbuck. Scott is new to Writers Read, and he's from Battleground, Washington. He's taught echo poetry workshops the past 3 years at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. The workshops were part of the Masters of Advanced Studies program in Climate Science and Policy at UC San Diego. He was a charter captain and commercial trawler in Depot Bay. His Trees, Fish, and Dreams climate blog has readers from 110 countries. His newest book, Between River and Street, documents the vanishing Pacific Northwest salmon culture before it may be gone. The book is available in Astoria at River Sea Gallery and Blue Scorcher Bakery and Cafe. This is Scott's first time participating in the Writers Read celebration. He will read his poem, Slim's Tree, for us tonight. And Scott, I think you have something you want to show on the screen. Is that right?
Yeah, Slim Bracken was my best fishing buddy before he fell off his bicycle and died a couple years ago near Mount Adams. Well, I'll read the poem now, and then if I can show his picture later, I will.
Okay.
So this is called Slim's Tree. And Slim was raised near Oregon City, but he spent his life as a logger on Mount Adams. And he only had 2 gears. And my wife and I loved him dearly before he died. His 2 gears were gratitude or celebration. And so he's this wise trickster elder person. Slim's Tree, quote, "Boss asked me to walk over that cliff and cut it. When I refused, he railed about costing him money. But I still said no. It was my life and my decision." Slim showed the path after I said one of my jobs was so distasteful, I wouldn't have taken it for $100 million. Big salmon in cooler, snowy peak above. I listened and learned without him criticizing. I had no one to blame but myself for staying in that job. Unlike evergreens and wild creatures, I had a lifetime or more of toxic relationships, lost opportunities, needless suffering, or maybe the wrong kind.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about Slim then.
Okay. He was a real funny character. Like I remember him taking my wife Suzette on a ride. Oh, there's his picture. You have it right there. Like 100 miles an hour when he's like in his 70s, and she screamed like a banshee. So he was like a real find for me because he was as passionate about fishing as I was. And he told me the story of his friend Barry, who was late to his own wedding because the fishing was good. And that was the first time I ever heard of somebody more crazy about fishing than I was. So there's his picture, and there's his steelhead. And he was just such a great character. And it was a real loss when he fell off his bicycle and died near Mount Adams a couple years ago. Thanks for asking about that.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. We're going to go on to our next writer right now, and that's Elle Schwartz. And Elle Schwartz is of Wheeler. She came to Elle came to the North Coast shortly before the plague with the intent to create an asylum for rogue queers and minstrels alongside visual artist Blue, Elle's partner of 21 years and spouse of 2 years. In the meantime, Elle seems to have completed a novel, The Abyss Gazes Also Into You, about dragons who offer humans a chance to redeem ourselves and rescue the troubled earth via the medium of drag. Now that's a book I think I want to read. Elle has participated before with Writers Read. Tonight, Elle is reading a shuffle poem, which is exactly what it sounds like. Elle types one line, yes, on a typewriter, on each card, shuffles the cards, and then reads to you whatever poem results. We will find out together what those results are. Please welcome Elle, who will read and create a shuffle poem. So where are you, Elle?
I am here.
Yes, okay, so
Okay,
show us what it is.
all right. So lines on cards. And I am now shuffling the cards and we will find out what results. This is a poem that has never existed before, although the lines have. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I think everybody else is too.
Okay. All right. I am the 100th songbird to drop from the sky. I am not what you expected. This time we are big. I am bleeding for that, or I want to. We contain this. Stop me so I can take this now. We have to go with this today. My heart is only tissue that creates breath and duly destroys blood. Watch this. This hunger sees you. I am invisible and I can prove it. We have to touch hunger. We are always leaving. I touch a surface to prove I'm me. I am a bag full of bloody questions while I starve opulently. I am coming along with you. Stand as close as you can to the edge of the shale slab at the top and sway, deciding. It fools us both. Then hunger, absence. Goals laughing or guilty adults, you decide. Decide who you're going to grieve so I can finally die. I am what you want. Don't touch it. Now tell me your name so I know what to become. It's contagious. Don't look away. How many tides does it take to bestow the foul and shining path of dying starfish before we suspect the moon? You cannot have this.
Now, I wonder if you want to shuffle those cards again and read them again to see if there's anything. The only problem is we probably don't remember where all the lines were at the first, but try it again and see, and let's see what happens then.
Okay, we'll find out what the poem is about this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Decide who you're going to grieve so I can finally die. I am what you want. Don't let it touch you. Now tell me your name so I know what to become. It's contagious. Don't look away. How many tides does it take to bestow the foul and shining path of dying starfish before we suspect the moon? I am invisible and I can prove it. We have to touch hunger. We are always leaving. I'm coming along with you. You cannot have it. I touch a surface to prove I'm me. I am a bag full of bloody questions while I starve opulently. I am bleeding for that, or I want to. I contain it. Stand as close as you can to the edge of the shale slab at the top and sway, deciding. It fools us both. Stop me so I can take this now. We have to go with this today. My heart is only tissue that creates breath and duly destroys blood. Watch this. This hunger sees you. Then hunger, absence. scolds, laughing, or guilty adults, you decide. I am the 100th songbird to drop from the sky. I am not what you expected. This time we're big.
All right. Well, it's interesting when you read the poems and you see them side by side, and then you start seeing how the lines come together or not. It's very, very interesting kind of poetry. We don't have a lot more time. I've been told that we're scheduled until about 8:30, and we don't know how long, if Zoom is going to continue beyond that. But I wanted to ask Elle, how did you come up with this? Did you, is this something that you made up, or something you saw and you wanted to try?
Well, there's two answers to that. There's the hoity-toity answer and the other answer. And the hoity-toity answer is that I'm a Gemini in many ways, including I'm more interested in both and than either or. And when writing a poem, I want all of the different, I want to put images together, but I want to put them all together in all the different ways that they can go together. And the less hoity-toity answer is I can't decide how to put which lines to put first. So
Well, I like both answers. I think they're both great. They both fit. They both fit. All right. Before we go, I wanted to check with our library manager to find out whether or not we have any questions from anybody. It doesn't sound like it. Do you, among yourselves, do you have any questions or comments that you would like to make? Emily?
Well, I just wanted to say that last exercise, I mean, that is an awesome thing to do. And I'm going to try that because I can never figure out which is going to go where. And I actually would like to just like take a poem and cut every line apart and just see what happens. So thank you, Elle.
Rearrange it. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. We had a few good ideas this time, a lot of different things going on. So that was great. That's one thing the judges really enjoyed. Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I just want to say thanks. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, great. Good. Okay. All right. Well, I do appreciate you all joining us and submitting your entries to Writers Read. Hopefully you will do it again next year. We will have the theme up in November, and hopefully you all will consider joining us again, submitting something, and we will be able to do this once more next year. And to all of you out there, this will be recorded, has been recorded. It will be available on the website, library's website, and on the Facebook page in another couple of days after our fantastic library manager edits it and prepares it for publication, I guess is what you could say. So if you want to see it again, or if you have friends who want to see it, be sure and let them know. But we sure appreciate you joining us. We enjoyed very much your creative talents. And again, please try submitting something again next year, because we want to hear from you again. And this is the end of the 4th annual Writers Read celebration, and we will see you again next year. Bye-bye.